my screen. Hello, hello, hello. It's time to start the webinar, so I'll speak slowly. Oh, was that a special effect that we had?
Oh, no.
All right. Let's go ahead and get this show on the road. So, hi everybody. Oops, let's get up to the right slide. I design games. I don't do other. I don't do this kind of thing.
We get just crazy spam callers.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that's a result of your successful Kickstarter campaign. Everybody wants to talk to you about how do you make this crazy thing work. Okay, so everybody who's in the audience right now, would you do me a favor and just kind of throw in something in the chat saying, yeah, we hear you, Chris. Everything seems to be working fine. Just say hello. I hear you. Fantastic. Okay. Well, welcome. It is the August Game Design Webinar from the International Game Developers Association. And today's topic is about Kickstarter, lessons learned. And I am your lovable host, the topic overlord, Chris Crowell, Crowell Interactive. I've been making video games for a long time. I'm a designer and a creative director, and I used to be on the board of directors for the IGDA, and now they have me doing this. Joining me today is the energetic and talented Sande Chen. She runs the game design special interest group for the IGDA, and keeps an eye, keeps the Facebook page rolling and runs social media, and generally keeps stirring things up within the game design community. So if you want to say hello, Sande.
Hello.
There we go. And today, special guest star, Howard Tsao. He's the team lead of Muse Games, and they have a really fun game that they ran through Kickstarter that I was excited about when I saw it, because I'm a fan of steampunk, I'm a fan of like zeppelins going through the air, and I'm really a fan of cooperative team games, and he hit all my buttons on that. And so it's a fun game. I've played it, and so he's going to tell us about what it was like to run a game successfully through the Kickstarter mill, and see what kind of lessons there are, and maybe inspire us to go out there and start our own Kickstarter campaigns, which would be awesome. So with that in mind, I'm going to make him a presenter, if I can figure out how to use this interface.
Yeah, we'll be in uncharted territory.
Yeah, so here we go. So the staff, he is going to be a presenter. Bam. And you are going to get that.
Show my screen.
There you go. Take it away, Howard.
All right. So can people see my screen?
I see
it.
it.
A presentation. All right, cool. So let me go to full screen. Does that work?
Oh. Awesome picture.
I guess I need to minimize. Can I just close this? Oh, okay, cool. Like that? Does that work?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I'll just start. So I'm the team lead of Muse, and I guess I'll share with you guys our Kickstarter story, which is pretty interesting, I think. We've been through a lot, and I will show you some boxes behind me after I'm done with the presentation, so just to give you an idea how intensive Kickstarter fulfillment became. So Muse, we are a team of 9 now in the city, and we also work with some contractors off-site. And we've started using Unity, and we develop all our games using Unity. And so Guns of Icarus is a teamwork-oriented game. It's our way to push the boundary of teamwork. And the way we did it was to have 4 people crew an airship together in a confined space, all playing different roles. So someone can play as a pilot, flies a ship, or a gunner that runs around and basically man all the different turret guns, and engineer repairs all the components as the ship takes damage. Communication, I would say, is vital in the game. So the the airships form teams and they battle against other airships in the skies. And it is also our expression of steampunk. And we took, I think in making the visuals happen to create this environment or this world, we were pretty faithful to the time period, but also extending it a little bit to incorporate some diesel punk elements, but sampling the different cultures and cultural influences around the world as well. So to create our own unique take of steampunk. The game is distributed on Steam, and it is Mac, PC, and Linux as well. And Unity is pretty great at making that happen. Along the way, we were fortunate enough to win a few awards and get nominated for a few. It's been pretty surreal. It's a huge honor. And some fun stats in the game. There have been a ton of shots fired in the game, and over 4.5 million ships have perished in the skies. And I think that number is from last month, so there are more than 750,000 matches played by now. And kind of give you guys the scope of the project, we've written a lot of code. I think that's kind of the interesting thing and the curse of doing multiplayer game is that the scope of the project really becomes huge. All right, so just into the nuts and bolts of the Kickstarter campaigns themselves. We actually ran 2 Kickstarters for the same game. In 2011, we did the campaign for the current game. And in 2013, which is last year, we did a Kickstarter for the expansion that we called Adventure Mode. And just to kind of give you guys an idea of how fast Kickstarter has grown and how big Kickstarter has become. So in 2011, when we did the campaign for the original game, we were the 8th highest funded game, and that was good for $35,000. And this is before Double Fine. I think when we wrapped up the campaign, Double Fine's campaign was just starting, which changed everything, as you guys know. And for Adventure, we actually did a PayPal add-on as well. So with that combined, we raised close to $225,000, and that was good enough for 53rd highest funded. So just kind of give you guys a sense of how big Kickstarter has become. And if you go through the anatomy of each campaign, originally with the first campaign for the current game, the majority of our backers came from Kickstarter itself, this Kickstarter site itself. So that was from the game pages, from front page, project of the day, essentially, and from search and a few other featured options. And that accounted for the majority of our backers. And if you fast forward to Adventure Mode, the majority of the backers actually came from what we can pull from our community, as well as some press and just whatever we can extract from our friends and family. So that actually accounted for the majority. So if you look at direct, I think direct is basically a Kickstarter term, when you use the Kickstarter analytics tool. And that essentially was friends, whoever we reached out to, and also a lot of players. I'll say the reason why we were successful for the second time around is because our player really supported our campaign. And Kickstarter itself accounted for actually just the minority of all the pledges. So I think now Kickstarter has gotten a lot bigger. But I think the lesson for us is that we still have to do a lot of the legwork to get the word out and to reach out to people, to drive people really to the campaign. And I've actually, so if you look at just the Adventure Mode campaign, or the life cycle of the campaign, it's, for us anyway, it was pretty distinct that there was there were different distinct periods or intervals in the life of the campaign. So there was a beginning and a middle and an end. And I actually talked to a number of my friends who ran Kickstarters recently, and they found essentially the same thing. And so in the beginning, I would say if you slice the beginning, which is, say the first 3 weeks of the campaign, we had a pretty good momentum going because a lot of our friends and a lot of players in the game supported us, and we also launched the campaign of packs. We actually had to run over to the Kickstarter arcade when they're setting up their booth in their room just to get the project approved. So super hectic, and running a campaign when you're at PAX is pretty intense. I think so. It definitely got us more attention, but it was also really stressful. And in the middle, we had, I would say, once we reached the Kickstarter threshold, we had more of a lull. And a lot of the people I talked to, they will prepare, a bigger unveil or some, update or some bigger announcement for the middle part of the campaign. We didn't do that, and I think it showed. In the middle, our progress is a lot slower. And in the end, I think a lot of people will wait till the last minute to make their pledges. So we got another boost. And at the same time, we also had some press coverage and also some YouTubers finding the campaign, doing some videos on it. And so I think that gave us a boost toward the end. I think with Kickstarter, so to us, funding is obviously great. And just getting some exposure for what we tried to build and the vision that we had, it was pretty amazing. But I think the most amazing thing about Kickstarter, to us anyway, were the people, or our backers. And originally we had, for the first campaign, for the current game, we had 1,200 people who backed our game, and there are more who wanted to test for us. And I think that was huge. It was really key. We had, at the time we did our Kickstarter, we had just finished a terrible relationship. We got out of a terrible relationship with our publisher, and we really wasn't thinking a lot about building a community and getting people to help us test and give us feedback. And so Kickstarter was the primary way we were able to build the core of a community. And some of the players who backed us on Kickstarter originally in 2011 are still in game today. So I think Kickstarter, in that sense, is one of the most powerful tools that we had as far as just reaching out to players, communicating with players, and building a community. And with Venture, we end up getting more backers as well, and they are already, a lot of them are already in the game, and they're helping us test, and they're, well, pretty soon we'll be able to give them something that they can test with, and that would be really exciting. And so a lot of people ask about physical gifts, whether to do them or not. And I think a lot of the campaigns now avoided doing physical gifts, and I would say good for you guys. But I mean, doing physical gifts, to us, it was really a balance between labor and love. Love in a sense that it's really just cool for us to. It's almost like we also look at it as memorabilia, or to have something tangible for our backers to collect if they so choose. But we put a lot of effort into crafting all the gifts, and it was fun. But on the other hand, it is hugely labor intensive because we did everything ourselves. And so from finding the vendors to packing and shipping everything, I think it definitely drove the post office labors crazy. And do we need it? Actually, in hindsight, in looking at the stats, most of the people just wanted digital content. The vast majority of our backers end up getting digital only. Digital meaning copies of the game, and we had collector edition stuff like soundtrack and costumes that we created for the cosmetic goods that we created, and some are just exclusive stuff. And I think the backers anyway really like that, and so for the most part they wanted, at least the majority just wanted that. So do I feel like we needed to have physical rewards to succeed? Most likely not, and we did it just because we thought it was fun to do. So I think when you're thinking about physical gifts, it's really sort of a balance between what you like to do, the time that you have, and just knowing that most of the time people just want a cool game. And for the type of reward that we ended up finding great was the best kind was the kind that were lightweight and they're inexpensive to pack and ship. So we made a bullet USB. That's actually a USB stick. It's a 4 gig USB stick. Ended up being pretty inexpensive to make per unit, and quality was pretty good, and we're pretty happy with it, and players really liked it. The worst kind was something bulkier. Like, so we did a logbook. So we got the logbook, and for a lot of the backers who pledged a higher tier, we decided to make sketches. It was fun, but it was highly intensive. I think we definitely stayed up quite a few nights and weekends just to do that. So I think it's just something to think about. And I think this is something that we actually realized and we found to be pretty useful, which is budgeting. So for people who did Kickstarter campaigns, you guys know that Kickstarter will take a percentage and Amazon will take a percentage as well. What we actually didn't account for was the percentage of people who essentially cancel, who have expired credit cards, who have wrong payment information or whatnot, and that actually accounted for about 5%, which is something that we actually didn't quite expect. And for since we did physical rewards, we also had to ship them and get them made, and that accounted for another percentage. So what we ended up was about 75% of all the Kickstarter pledges. And that we thought was pretty good. We definitely, before we ordered the physical gifts, we definitely took budget, or took costs and everything into consideration and looked at everything before we incorporated them into the different tiers. And so I think that's just something to keep in mind when you actually offer physical rewards. You just want to make sure that you don't they don't end up just taking all the pledges away. You're not spending a significant portion of your pledges, the money that you get from Kickstarter, into actually making them. And I think the one huge lesson that we learned was with communicating scope and just communication on the page itself. And so when we were doing the first campaign, we wanted to talk about the vision because we honestly didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. It was really early on in the project, and Kickstarter was new to us, and we didn't really have as much of a clue as to what to expect. And so if you look at the original Kickstarter campaigns page, we definitely were more vision-driven. We're like, oh yeah, we're going to build all these things in one shot, and we made $35,000, and we're like, oh, we kind of can't. And so in the adventure mode campaign, we were trying to raise funds and try to get help to build the rest of it once we had the game released. And so there's definitely, I think some of the original backers definitely weren't too happy that, because I guess they definitely expected us to have delivered 3 games worth of content already. And I think, yeah, I mean, to be blunt, we just screwed up there in how we communicated initially, just not being careful about scope and about what we can deliver. And so I think we just have to be really upfront with our backers and just totally own up and apologize. So, you can see on our adventure mode page, we not only incorporated sort of what we were doing about the situation in the page itself, we also tried to reach out to everybody who had complaints and try to basically make it with them. And in doing so, we'll essentially give them more exclusive stuff, or we'll give them extra rewards and whatnot. And for the most part, I think people were pretty understanding, but there are definitely some people who were they were just totally upset. So I think the lesson for us, and hopefully for people who are running Kickstarter campaigns, just to be really careful about scope and about what you can realistically deliver. I think we definitely made the mistake of not thinking it through, and it came back to bite us. And okay, this should be the last slide, and it is about the number of tiers that we think is reasonable. So this is actually our adventure mode reward tiers, and as you guys can see, we clearly have too much fun, or we got way disorganized, and this is way too much. I think realistically, if you have somewhere between 10 and 15 tiers, I think that's plenty. And we did try, in the adventure mode campaign, we did try basically what people call the early bird reward, so which is kind of limited quantities of a tier at a reduced price, and I think people enjoy backing them because it's just early access stuff. And yeah, I think that's really all I have, and I'll just take questions and think of more stuff along the way. And yeah, I think with that, I'll close out the slides and take questions.
All right. So thank you for giving us that presentation there. If someone was going to do a Kickstarter, do you recommend that they start forming a community first for their game, or would that come with the process of starting a Kickstarter?
By the way, should I still show screen, or should I stop showing the screen?
It's up to Chris, I guess.
Sure, I'll switch it back to me.
Okay.
Brilliant. Okay, so I'll leave this up while we're talking.
All right, yeah. So you mentioned the importance of the community backing, and especially going into the second Kickstarter. Would you recommend that people try to develop their community first before even attempting to do a Kickstarter?
Yeah, I think with Kickstarter now, I mean, it's a tough question. It's something that we face as well, which is that I think with Kickstarter, there are just a lot more projects going on Kickstarter nowadays. And so it's definitely harder to get noticed on Kickstarter itself. And I think having a community would definitely help. And a lot of I feel like with devs, a lot of times we have to do our own legwork to get the word out now. So I think having a community is definitely great. But on the other hand, a lot of times people are, teams are just starting out, maybe their first project, so it's going to be hard to build a community, and they obviously have to rely on Kickstarter as well to get their project noticed. So I think it's sort of a tough balance where, at least if people have done projects before, I think to be able to reach out to the existing community would definitely be helpful. But for people who are just starting out, I think it's going to be tough because there's not really as much of an existing community to tap into, and I think it's I think it's a tough catch-22 type of situation. I think it's really natural nature of Kickstarter being so big nowadays. I mean, I think what would help is if the devs at least show a little bit of what they can do, because I feel like a lot of times people back project on Kickstarter is really the project itself has a huge draw, obviously, but it's also the devs themselves.
But
so
what
they
do you
can be like
explain about that potato salad?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, hey, I guess it works.
Well, I think the potato salad thing is an indication of what happens when something explodes out of the one box of Kickstarter and across social media, right? That's sort of the big dream that everybody would have, is that whatever it is that they're putting up on Kickstarter has that kind of magic appeal that's just it's the pet rock of Kickstarter, really, is what that potato salad thing was. So it's good the guy's using it for good, not evil.
Yeah, just giving a lot of people potato salad. But yeah, that's interesting. Like, what did you do to market? You said that you needed some support, or at least you needed your people to do a lot of the marketing. So what sort of things did you do?
Well, I think for the Adventure Mode campaign, because we already have a player base, we can just, at least a part of the battle is just let people know about it. So we'll post that, post that we have the Kickstarter in-game, or on Steam, or in our forums, social media, just to kind of drive awareness. And we'll try to just reach out to media or press, which I can't say that I'm like the best at, but at least we'll try to do basically everything we can to get the word out. Because I think relying on Kickstarter itself to make the project of the day or to be featured is going to be tougher because there's so many projects out there.
Right.
So real quick, I want to jump in and because I think we're leading into this next question, which is, can you speak to the social media platforms that you used, and what was your experience with those? What was effective, and what disappointed you?
I think when we started, there wasn't we don't have much of a social media presence at all, because we were working with a publisher. We kind of just relied on them, or thought that, or expected them to do the work for us, which is pretty dumb. But I think so in the beginning it was definitely tough. I mean, I guess we were lucky that Kickstarter was small, so we still got some featuring and whatnot. There weren't that many game projects up on Kickstarter. But by the time the second campaign came around, I think we had more of a presence just because we had more people playing the game. So I guess we didn't have to try anything like too crazy. But I do think that a lot of it is really for devs to make sure that their story is heard. And so I think the way of, I think a lot of times, like with Kickstarter campaigns now, people have like super polished, really highly produced, edited videos, and I think that's great because maybe it connotes quality. But I think if the devs can really tell their story and to kind of give more perspective or a deeper dive into what the project is, what the inspiration is, then I think there's a better way for people to connect to the campaign, just because they're also connecting to the people who are behind the campaign. And I think that's actually pretty key. Like some of my friends are just two people, and they were talking about how, like, what gave them inspiration, and really went into depth about how their story came about, and how, like, they're indie devs and whatnot. I think people gravitate towards the story as much as the project, I think.
Okay.
Right.
Let's see, we've got some more questions on the side here. I'd like to work with the questions from the audience as much as possible. Let's see, Edward Pacheco asks, maybe we can have a topic on the IGDA forums to form a project without Kickstarter as part of the plan. So he wants to, it sounds like Eduardo's saying...
Kristen question, I think.
Well, it is, but I like it because it's sort of like, hey guys, let's put on a play. My dad has a barn, I mean, it's that kind of old school. Like, anybody else want to get together and do that? And that's, I think, the IGA is definitely a great association
there used to be
work with
a
that.
board
Yeah.
like that. I remember it was just like seeking, and then you would list what you're seeking or you wanted to bring up with a project. So
Okay.
I think that was during the past. I don't remember the name of the board.
Yeah.
In the old forums.
It seems like it would be a great thing to have on the forums, though. Not game design per se, but just as a general, like, yeah, people want to get together and do this. Tristan, what do you think?
Yes. There is a forum for that stuff.
Okay. So Tristan will look at making that happen. So stay tuned on the IGDA. I'm sure that there'll be an announcement when that comes out. Okay, so that was a good one, Eduardo. I share your excitement about getting together and doing things with other people. Okay, lack of faith seems to be a massive problem on Kickstarter, says Gab B. Taylor. Or I guess crowdfunding in general. How do you suggest we overcome this beforehand to get the support the project needs? So yeah, pre-selling, pre-qualifying, and getting your brand, I guess, reputable before you even open the curtains and let people see it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think sometimes I think now on Kickstarter, there are definitely people who are backing projects because they're indie projects that they want to see it succeed because they want to support new ideas. But there are also a lot of people, I think, who are looking at Kickstarter project as a way to pre-order. And so if that's the case, then I think a lot of times people care about, okay, people care about whether they think the dev or the people behind the project can deliver or not. So I think to be able to show something more than just sketches in a video will go a long way. I mean, it's tough, but if there's a way to show more art or show more of the playables, I think that will also help. Because at the end of the day, I think from a backer's perspective, they want to know, say if they're intrigued by the concept, they also want to know that if they pledge, they can actually get something out of it, and to make sure that the devs deliver on what they say they're going to deliver. So I think just more to that end will help, which also makes, obviously, putting up the campaign tougher because we'll have to do more work up front. But I think that is really what I think makes a campaign more likely to succeed, I think.
Right. And I think if you have a proven record already, you should publicize that. If you've had games come out before that you've been a part of, you can certainly put that down and reflect on your personal record.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, good. I felt that was a good answer. All right, on to the next one. Tanal Barakat says, do small indie game projects have a chance of getting funded on Kickstarter, or is Kickstarter catered more towards games that are bigger in scope or larger projects?
I think bigger scope projects have an advantage just because they are, they're more known entities. I mean, when you have, say, Final Fantasy producers or composers doing a project, then yeah, I mean, people can be drawn towards it. But I think the smaller projects definitely have a chance if I think we do the work to at least tell our side of the story and make sure that we connect with the audience, but also keep the pledge goals or the funding goals realistic for Kickstarter. I think what we realized in talking with other devs or with us is that a lot of times on Kickstarter it's not really possible to get funding for the whole way through. So for to make Guns of Icarus, it was not possible to build the game with $35,000 that we raised on Kickstarter. So which makes it tough. So I think we can be more realistic with Kickstarter, the funding that we get on Kickstarter, and knowing that, okay, if we are able to fund the campaign, fund our project with a portion of money from the Kickstarter campaign, that would be pretty great already. So I think in setting the funding goals, we can also be more realistic. So if we set a lower goal, and once that goal is met and succeeded, then people will know that, okay, this project is going to happen, and that could also drive more people to support the project because they know that the funding goal has been met.
Well, I think that what you're saying is, and from a sales point of view, people will, when you've got those big names, they have that sort of gravitas and reputation that they bring in, and so there's more of a sense of, oh yeah, I'm safe to to put money into this project because these guys really know how to make it happen. Whereas if you're an unknown or a small indie, people are going to risk less, right, until you've established some level of trust with them. You don't have a brand coming in, so you need to ask for less. As much as how big your idea is, regardless, if you're an indie, you just aren't going to make it if you ask for a lot of money off the bat. That's unrealistic. So when you say ask for realistic goals, scope down your project, or come up with at least an initial project that is modest, that matches your own brand within the Kickstarter community, and then maybe the next go around you could come in, either phase it out so that you build it out and establish credibility with the audience before you ask them for a bigger investment. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Sandy, do you want to grab the next one?
You probably have a better way of seeing it.
Okay.
So.
Sorry about that. We're having GoToMeeting webinar interface questions. Obviously, a game designer did not build this interface, I have to say. Okay.
I think it was the feedback changes or something, or was it this one? Can you discuss some of the major design changes that took place as a result of backer feedback, as well as times when you went against user feedback to stick to your design?
I think for us, we're always listening to player feedback in general. We actually are kind of nutty about keeping track of player feedback and ideas, and we essentially log everything, and we'll sit around every about 2-3 weeks, just talk about all the feedbacks that we collected during that period. And I think we actually implement a lot of it, because by now a lot of players who give us feedback, who are really avid about giving us feedback, they know the game inside out, and they really know how the game can be improved. So I think, yeah, we actually take player feedback really seriously. I would say it may be the primary driver for us to iterate on the game. And do we always implement player feedback? No. But I think at least when we don't, we'll let them know that their feedback's been heard. And sometimes, actually, I think a lot of times, if the players know that we're listening to them, they will feel pretty happy about it, even though we might have a different take on a feature. So, for example, like a lot of the players wanted some form of more aggressive kick feature in the game, and up until now, we are pretty adamant about not implementing that because our game is really about teamwork. So we want to stick to that spirit, and so a lot of things so we'll find a different approach, such as using more. Having more small features to accommodations, thumbs up, good job, type of positive reinforcement mechanics to be able to encourage more teamwork instead of having players dwell on negative. And so we'll take a different approach, and sometimes we'll draw a line in the sand. But I think if we just let them know that we're listening, and a lot of times tell them that this is why we don't do something, they're usually pretty happy about it.
Seem to have a couple of questions. So, Chris?
I wanted to mute it so that everybody doesn't listen to me smashing my keyboard. Well, hi. We just promoted Stephen Broida. He's part of the IGDA, and he was, hi there. Stephen, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Oh, hi, I'm Steve Broida. I'm I've been curating the IGDA's Kickstarter page for some time now, since about the start of 2013. I've recently got some additional help, including someone from the Guns of Icarus Online team, which I am very, very excited to have join our little group of curation experts. I'm looking forward to working with everyone, and I've had quite a bit of experience as sort of a casual observer from outside and a little bit inside in terms of Kickstarter and some of the patterns and habits I've noticed when observing what people do. Quite a bit of stuff, actually.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Let's go ahead. Feel free to chime in then on what's going on with with the questions. Alrighty, so the next one here is. All right, I apologize in advance. I'm certainly gonna murder this name, but Anubhav Guha asks, how long does it usually take to run a Kickstarter? Out of curiosity. So what? Yeah, from you turn on. I guess I guess you have pre-planning, right? And then you put it out there, and then it ends. How's that process working? About how long does it take?
Yeah, so for our campaigns, we ran for 60 days. I think I feel like there are advantages and disadvantages running for 30 versus 60 days. And I think a lot of people have great success with a shorter campaign just because it's more intense and people think people have more of a sense of urgency. I think we did it for 60 days really just because we thought the scope of the project was, the scope of what we're trying to do is pretty big. So we wanted as much time as possible.
If you had to do it again, would you do it the same way, or would you think you would do it for the 30-day and just live on energy drinks for a month?
I'm not sure. I think we still got pretty great results for a 60-day campaign, and that was already pretty stressful. So I can only imagine for the people who do 30-day campaigns how stressful that is. I'm already stressed out a lot of the time, so maybe I'll still keep to the 60-day campaign. I'm not sure.
Okay. What did you do before you opened up the Kickstarter?
Yeah. So I think, especially with the Adventure Mother expansion, the second Kickstarter, we were a lot more careful about just crafting the message, making sure that we plan and we make sure that we communicate the scope and communicate what we're trying to do a lot more carefully than the first time. And so we definitely spent some time just working on the Kickstarter page, on the messaging, and on what we want to say, and planning out the different milestones that we could potentially reach. And I think we also spend time, at least initially, trying to figure out what rewards we can potentially offer and what that will cost. So some budgeting as well. Yeah, we definitely spend a few weeks before we ever put it on Kickstarter. And also, like, a big part of it was the video. I think we were lucky that our composer also has some video shooting and editing skills, and he helped us. But he will come in and we'll do a shoot, and that took a little bit of time as well. So between the video, the page, and getting the reward and budget all figured out took us a few weeks at least.
Okay. Let's see here.
And if you're going to do a larger project, I think you want to do something with a lot more allow for more planning time. I worked on helping out Dave Marsh and Carl Roloffs, great people by the way, on the Shadowgate campaign. By the way, Shadowgate comes out on Steam tomorrow, August 21st. Very good re-envisioning of the original Mac Venture game, highly recommended. Owes its existence thanks to Kickstarter. And I remember what happened was that Dave Marsh and Carl Roloffs, at the time they knew me as the most knowledgeable person when it came to Kickstarter and asked for my help in order to assist them with the campaign. And one of the things I emphasized was that you wanted to, I recommended at least about 2 months or so of pre-planning, given that we were working with some very veteran developers who had lots of experience under their belt, wanted to do something really big with Shadowgate, since it's a well-known property, or at least among classic gamers as far as the audience goes. But I wanted to make sure that they were able to, one, have time to try and sort of figure out a plan of action in terms of seeing what other Kickstarters are doing, what's successful, what wasn't. And I also want to make sure they had enough time to scout out people to make the physical rewards. Don't just say, It's not just a matter of saying, I want to do a T-shirt. It's a good idea to find who's going to make those T-shirts, how much it will cost, and that way you can factor into your budget in the amount of money you want to put in on your Kickstarter. So that way you can be better prepared when the campaign launches and make sure that you give a more accurate number when all is said and done. Chris, I think.
Okay.
Chris?
There we go.
You're
Sorry.
muted.
Yeah, okay, I
Yeah,
should be back.
so-
I should.
Okay.
I'm back on now? Okay. So I think that's a really good point to go through. What I'm seeing here is what Howard's saying is you're essentially establishing a contract with the people that you say, this is what we're going to deliver if you give us money. So you have to take that pretty seriously and get semi-lawyerly, at least in terms of really being clear as to this is what we're going to do if we get this much money, right? That was sort of the lesson learned on the first go-around. Yeah, and then in the pre-planning also make sure that you're not that you've got the right idea in terms of the rewards and the other stuff that you make sure you research all that so that you don't get caught out and say, oh yeah, we're going to give everybody sweatshirts and find out the cheapest you can make them for is more than they gave you for that benefit. That's just kind of classic due diligence, but I think it's a good point. All right, let's move on to the next question, which I had flagged here. Okay, so Zednek Zohora asks, how do you estimate the basic fund goal? I thought this was a great question. When you decided did you decide to go for the lower goal while using stretch goals? And how do you figure out those numbers? What it is you're asking people for.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think for us it was the way we did it. It's sort of somewhere in the middle, which I don't know. I guess it may be a different approach, but I think it's a combination of thinking through what the scope of the project is itself and what budget, just a ballpark budget or some vague estimate as to what that would entail, but also look at what Kickstarter, like what other comparable Kickstarter projects have been doing. So somewhere in there will be how we decided to set a minimum funding threshold. Like it's not completely based on the project itself. The estimate, or at least the budget of the project itself, is really also taking into consideration what we think we can realistically achieve on Kickstarter. And so the way we did is, okay, fine. We think that, so we'll actually break the entire scope down into several milestones, and we'll have essentially a rough estimate or pledge goal that corresponds to each of the major milestones of the project. So it ended up like if we if the backers back us up to a certain milestone, then at least we'll know, okay, where we stand. So I think a lot of people use stretch goal. I think that's a great way to kind of scale out the project so that you have the baseline, okay, fine, you deliver something, and if you get more, then you can deliver to that stretch goal. So I would say it's a combination. It's a combination of what we think we actually need versus what we think we can achieve on Kickstarter.
I wanted to run back to the previous question, perhaps about were you a IGDA curated Kickstarter, and maybe Stephen can also chime in about what are the benefits of being a IGDA curated Kickstarter.
That is a very good question. One of the biggest things I wanted to try, and in terms of what it means to be an IGDA curated Kickstarter campaign, right now, when it comes to what it means, we want it to mean that the IGDA believes in you and your project. That we have faith that you are going to finish the game, that you're going to put your heart and soul into it in order to make it a reality, and that you are, and that basically why I've envisioned it being a sort of like, I guess you could say sort of almost like a seal of quality of sorts, that people can trust that you will be able to see your game through all the way to completion from start to finish, and that when all is said and done, there will be a fun game that people will be able to play. And so therefore, if they know that if they back a game that's from the IGDA, then they will be able to expect a fun game come out in the future thanks to this Kickstarter campaign. And so people will see it, see that it's IGDA curated, and go, wow, that means I can definitely trust these people. I want to back them. That's the idea of where I want it to be. I think it still needs to, there still needs to be more work in terms of overall general IGDA awareness and what the IGDA is and what it's about. Not so much among game developers. Game developers, you know, a lot of game developers and game development students know about the IGDA. But in terms of game players, people that may not be so much as to making the games, but really enjoy playing them, making sure that they're aware of the IGDA and what the IGDA stands for, by helping to expand on that, that can help make an IGDA curated campaign mean a lot more to people and help bring a lot more support to Kickstarter campaigns. At least that's what I want to see happen in the future. And it's not something that can happen overnight. It's not something that's going to happen instantly. But I believe it's something that Tristan and Kate and everyone in the IGDA is working very hard towards.
So how much time do we have? Maybe one or two more questions?
Yep, I think so. So there was a question. I mean, Howard was going to. The question was posed to Howard is whether he was part of the IGDA curated.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
You were?
Yeah.
Okay. How'd that work out for you?
I think it was great. And on Kickstarter, you'll be able to track the stats, and we definitely get backers from the IGDA page. And especially, you know, when we first started out, I mean, that was great because, you know, IGDA was one of you know, a number of like the official curated Kickstarter pages, and I think that definitely helped. It was awesome.
Cool. Okay, there was another question here that I really liked, which was in regards to work-life balance. So I assume you have not spent your entire adult life working for Muse Games, and you and other teammates have experience working in other game studios. We know work-life balance is constantly a question in the industry. What was your experience like in those terms, working on a Kickstarter game versus working in a big studio? What kinds of changes were you able to make, and did you choose to make, and how did that work out?
Well, when we started making games, we hadn't made a game before. Okay. So it was actually a new experience for us. I think we were just pretty passionate about doing this, and we got started. The four of us just kind of got started. I mean, we were coming from another failed startup, so we started just doing something we felt like we really wanted to do. And I think in the beginning, work-life balance was a lot tougher. I think especially when we were working with with the publisher for Guns to start, and we were just having, I mean, essentially I feel like the entire time when we were working with the publisher was a crunch. You know, we had some super crazy deadlines, and, you know, obviously we're kind of wide-eyed and we overpromised, and, you know, they just really kind of took advantage of us. And so we were like just kind of crunching, killing ourselves the whole time, sometimes staying like, you know, 3, 4, staying up till like 3, 4 in the morning, staying up all night or whatever.
That's typical game development experience, by the way, certainly for beginners, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's pretty typical, I would say, but I think along the way, we realized that if we want to keep our sanity, if we want to stay together for the long haul, we really needed to watch, basically, to really keep more of a work-life balance. And we kind of also found that at some point, just being so tired to the point where we're actually just making mistakes and introducing bugs and just can't think is it kind of got to us to the point where we're like, okay, wait, that's not, for the long haul, that wasn't really productive. So I think there are definitely times where we'll still, work, really long hours or stay up super late. But for the most part, we'll try to keep more of a work-life balance and try to keep more regular hours where we work together, just so that we don't burn out. And I think just that's a hard lesson learned. And I think earlier on, we definitely didn't watch for our just schedule or time. And I think it was to the point where we're like, oh man, we're kind of worn out. So,
yeah. Well, I think that's not just to Kickstarter, right? Like, this is a problem with making games.
Yeah.
Is you really get into it, right? And then next thing you know, it's 3 o'clock in the morning and stuff. I certainly went through that in my first several years of making games, and it's a very common thing. It's such a fun, engaging activity that it's difficult. So it sounds like regardless of Kickstarter or whatever, at least certainly with Kickstarter, you're more in charge of your own destiny, per se, right? Like when you have an external force like a publisher or even an upper executive layer, they're putting, conditions on you that you really have to meet. Whereas when you're in a Kickstarter environment, you're putting those on yourself, and you can, you probably have a little bit more control over how realistic, once you know and understand what you're getting yourself into. So certainly you've learned from that first round, and you're making much more realistic goals on this second go around, right?
Yeah, and well, I think with Kickstarter specifically, I was definitely pretty OCD about it. I was just constantly hitting the refresh button. It's stressful. It's stressful running a Kickstarter campaign. Very stressful. Okay. I think it gets better when you actually hit that funding goal. But before then, yeah, it's super stressful.
I'm sure.
Spamming everybody, spamming my friends and other devs. Hey, help me out with the word.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Let's see. Sandy, did you have any questions that you really wanted to get in here? We've only got a couple of minutes left, so.
No, I think that the audience had a good assortment of questions, and
okay.
I'm glad that we were able to get through these questions, and that I think it is a subject that a lot of people are really interested in finding out what are the experiences and how to go forth and do a Kickstarter.
Yeah, that's I thank you, Howard, so much. You've actually been through this. It's something I've been thinking about a lot, and I always, we always have our friends who are like, let's do a Kickstarter, let's get together, let's do these things. And so it's really helpful to have somebody who's been through this, talk about it a bit. And I know that you've talked about it a bit on your blog at Gamma Sutra, right down here. I will throw that out for everybody. So. Howard's got a blog on Gamma Sutra, and he's on Twitter, and they have a Facebook page for Guns of Icarus. So if you want to go ahead and show some love, go there and hit like the page. That's always, nothing bad comes from that. So that's a good thing. And honestly, check out the game if you can. It's really pretty fun, and as he said, it's doing something different. And I felt it really kind of moved multiplayer games forward, and I liked that a lot. Okay, so I guess we're at kind of the wrap-up time. So I got my final slide up here. Just to remind everybody, the third Wednesday of every month is our game design hour of power. You can register at the IGDA.org/webinars, and tell all your game designer friends. and send us suggestions, or if you feel like you've got something you want to talk about, or you know other people who want to talk about things that have to do with game design. This is not for Chris or Sandy to sit here and tell you. It's to bring in great speakers like Howard to come in and tell you their experiences and share with the rest of the developer community.
And I also want to do a plug for game design aspect of the month, is that it's supposed to be a community blog. So if you want to send in articles, I will publish them as long as I can figure out which category of topic it should be filed under, but it's usually very open. Right. There are some topic suggestions that people send in. They have questions, and so you're free to send in topics too, if you would like people to write an article on it.
Okay, so just so we're actually planned enough to know what we're doing next month. So next month we're going to talk about game balancing with Ian Schreiber, and this is an arcane art, and hopefully we'll apply some science to things, and he'll talk about it, and we'll just have a big old round table about what works and what doesn't work and how to approach this kind of crazy problem. Okay, thanks everybody. Howard, thank you so much.
No worries.
Yep.
That was awesome.
Great. And Sandy, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And
thanks for inviting me in.
Absolutely,
Much
Stephen.
appreciated.
Thanks for your work on the curation side of things.
Which reminds me, there's some new submissions that just came in that need to be taken care of, so I better go get to that.
Okay, IGDA.org. Sounds like that's the place where you go to look for all that stuff. Okay, folks, I'm going to end the show, and we'll see you maybe on the Game Design Facebook page. Find it, use it, be there. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, everybody.